Well, here we are, me and my son Jacob. Jacob and I built this boat about 7 years ago, I guess. About 7 years ago, 6 or 7 years ago, when Jacob was only 9 years old. We had a lot of fun with it. We built it from scratch, just from plywood and epoxy, a lot of marine grade plywood, and it's been a great boat. But we let it sit for a while, and where we left it sit, it was kind of in a moist area. Part of it was touching the ground, and it sat there for about a year and we didn't use it. So that's what happens when kids get bigger, right? Yeah. So you had a lot of fun with it, though, right?
Yeah, it was awesome.
And you want to use it some more?
Yes.
So we're gonna repair it, and we've got some rot which is over here, and it was really rotten here, and on the other side, kind of in the same area. The other side's not too bad, but this side got some rot from here to here, and then some more about here. And so we're gonna tear all that out. Get the rotten wood out of there and repair it and redo the epoxy and get it back in the water. We're going to put a coat of paint on it and it's going to be good to go. And then we may even, kick it up a notch or two with some solar panels and electric motor, but that's down the road. So you ready to start getting some of this stuff off of here? All right. Well, let's start with taking out this oarlock right here on this side over here. We're going to start on this side. So you want to come over here and do that? Yeah, it's going to work. Let's see if we can pull that out here. So the first thing that we're going to do is take the chisel and the hammer and just get some of this rotten stuff off, trying not to damage the main hull. Yeah.
The worst of the rotten wood will come right off by hand, then use a hammer and chisel to get the parts that are more stubborn. A sander will finish the job.
If you find yourself in the market for a random orbit sander, get one with a hook and loop sanding pad. It's just like Velcro. You stick it on there and that's it. It helps to try and line up the holes, which is sometimes easier said than done. I just made it look easy, but it's usually not. And so I've got some 50 grit, real heavy, super coarse sandpaper here that's going to just make real light work out of this loose wood we want to take off. All right, so it's going along good. I think we're going to take a little break, or maybe I'm going to take a break and leave you to sand and clean up that side. But before I do, I just want to mention the clothes that we're wearing from Dickies. They sent us this stuff. Being a blogger, it's one of the perks you get every once in a while. And it's the shirt, the T-shirt, advertised that it soaked up sweat, and I'm like, yeah, we'll see. But and normally when we're in Florida, we're way almost to the southern end of Florida, and it's probably what's today, almost the 1st of all, and it's 100 degrees. I'm sure the actual temperature is at least 95, and it feels like temperature with the humidity is well over 100. We've got this little roof to give us some shade, but usually down here you're just pouring, covered in sweat, and it's not very comfortable at all, right? You know what I'm talking about. And but I actually was concerned that I was going to be too hot, wearing this kind of a thick, heavy shirt, and but that's not the case at all. I actually feel way better. Do you? You feel more comfortable? Yeah. And so do I. And I wore sleeves because we're messing with fiberglass and stuff like that. But I'm actually more comfortable than I normally would be. So it's I'm happy about the Dickies clothing. So thank you to Dickies for sending that stuff to us. All right. So I'm going to let you keep working on this, or we can both take a break. It's your call. But it's break time for me. All right. So as you can see, we've removed all the old wood, and this wood has got a little bit of damage, but it's not bad enough that we'd want to tear it out and since that's the main hull, we want to try and keep that intact as much as we can. I've cut a new piece to go on top here. So the first thing I'm going to do is just pre-drill a couple screws into it, just so that I already have holes lined up, and then I'm going to mix up some epoxy and wet both this piece and the boat with the epoxy, and then I'll put it in and put those screws in those holes, and I'll add some more screws after that.
We used West Systems G-Flex epoxy, which it's a very elastic type epoxy, and it'll bond to wet wood, which is what we needed in this case, because the wood was rotten, meaning it was wet and hasn't completely dried out when we started our repairs. So you mix up the epoxy, and we added a colloidal silica filler to thicken the epoxy. This lets you make kind of a more sticky or pasty or thicker glue type epoxy, which is what we needed. I later used more of the silica in a different type of epoxy to make a filler. I would have used a G-Flex for the filler as well, but I just didn't have enough.
Can you see back here what I'm doing to the back of the board, Jacob? Just kind of buttering it on the back of the board. Trying to cover that whole thing real well. And it looks like it's sticking pretty good. I'm going to put a little bit, not as much, on the actual boat, but I really don't want it running down my blue paint. So I'm going to kind of be a little stingy with it on the boat. And I'm starting at the top so that it'll run down and not hit the paint until I've had a chance to smooth it out. That's good enough for that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to set this down and then just put this back on and put that screw back in. You see it's getting some squeeze out on the top. Then I'm going to add a few more screws to hold it well. I want to kind of pull these screws in a little bit if I can, if they've got enough bite, because we want to have a smooth surface when we're done.
After finishing applying the epoxy to the first side of the board and screwing that down, I unscrewed the other end of the same board, did the same thing on that end, and then screwed it all back together, which is what you see in the video. We did the same thing on the other side of the boat.
Alright, well here we are, day 2. We've got the wood that we put on yesterday, the replacement of the rotten wood we've got on there. The epoxy that we used is dried and cured up, and it's ready to take these clamps off. So what Jacob's doing on the other side is he's trying to remove some of these little ridges in the epoxy that we have here. And with the epoxy, you really want to try and get it as smooth as you can when you first put it on, because when it dries, once it's cured, it's very hard, and it's a lot of work to sand it off. He's using a chisel to try and take some of the bigger pieces off. Little points, and the difficulty with getting it really smooth while you're working it is that it's got a limited time that you can work with it. It dries pretty fast, and so you have to kind of find a happy medium between getting it where you want it to be and making sure you use all of your epoxy before it goes bad, and getting to do the jobs you need to do, and balancing that with trying to get it as smooth as you possibly can. If you have to choose, getting the spots filled that you need filled, getting the things glued that you need glued, is more important than getting it smooth, because you can always sand it later. It's just hard to do. So we're going to take the clamps off, and then hopefully everything stays in place, and we'll be ready to start sanding and get ready for some paint. So Jacob, you ready to take some clamps off? All right. Ready? I put this on here to keep the clamp from being epoxy to the wood.
At this point, I'm just adding some mineral spirits to a towel to wipe down any sanding dust that's on the boat and get it ready for prep and paint. For areas that needed fill, I used a PL window and door sealant.
Good. Wiped it down. I'm just putting some of the sealant up under it. You know, because I didn't use any of the fairing, you know, the epoxy with the filler in it. I didn't use any of that up under the bottom because I was afraid I wouldn't have enough, which was right. So I'm using this window and door sealant to fill in this gap on the bottom. We should have done that the first time around, but we didn't know.
After going around the whole boat and filling any holes or gaps that remained after the epoxy was done, then we just went ahead and cleaned out all of our junk that was inside the boat and got the whole outside wiped down to get the whole boat ready for paint.
What'd you do with the paint here?
It's under the boat. Oh, the paint.
The Petit EasyPoxy paint we used is great paint, and that's the only product I used. I didn't use a separate primer or anything, just multiple coats of paint, and if you do it right, the finish is just outstanding. My biggest concern was to not get any of the paint on my Dickies clothing that I had been wearing for this whole project, because by this point I'd fallen in love with them, and I didn't want to ruin them. They were supposed to be work clothes, but I did not want paint on mine. I only painted the rails that were the new wood, and then Jacob really did most of the work. He decided to go ahead and flip the boat over and paint all the blue, so the whole boat got a new coat of paint.
Here you go. Ready? All right, there she goes. There we go. Go by the. That's fine. We can go around. So what do you think? You're gonna stick with oar power, or are we gonna do solar?
I don't know.
Solar would be pretty
Solar
cool.
would be pretty cool, but
Well, how would you
I
do
like
it?
oars.
How would you do the solar?
And put like a little roof here and put some panels up there.
Solar panel on top of a little roof. That'd give you shade too.
That would be nice because it's sunny out here. Pretty nice breeze today though.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not bad today. The water's kind of calm too. Never a bad day on the water. All right. All right, that's what I'm talking about. That's a nice mullet. Make mullet dip. Okay, well here we are. We've got the boat finished, painted, in the water. Jacob caught a huge mullet, and we're having a great time. So if you ever get the chance to build a wooden boat, you should do it. It's fun. Thanks for watching the video, and have a good day. Stand up right back there. I wanted to show how well the boat floats right at the very end. Oh man. Well, we're going to see how well our dippy stoves dry now, huh? Thanks for making the video with me. All right, let's go. You cooled off now?
Yeah.